because otherwise it's
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today, this beautiful Saturday in September. At least it's beautiful in Atlanta, although I did hear it was going to get a little warm. We are Sisters in Crime Atlanta, and this is our monthly author talk program. We call it Off the Shelf. And this is the chapter bringing readers and writers together. It is open to the public, all are welcome. We encourage active participation from our audience, so please feel free to raise your hand or post a comment in the chat. But we love audience participation. And what our goal here is to get to know our author, our guest author, a little bit better, and hopefully get that author's books off the shelf and in the hands of our readers. And today I am very happy to have a friend of mine as our guest author, Sharon Marchisello. Sharon, welcome.
thanks for having me. Welcome,
Absolutely.
everybody.
Absolutely. So, just to share a little bit about Sharon with you, she is the author of 3 published books. One is a nonfiction book and it's called Live Well and Grow Wealth. It's on personal finance. She also has published 2 mysteries, Going Home and Secrets of the Galapagos. Her 4th book is titled Trap, Neuter, Die. It's a cozy mystery scheduled to be released
September
soon.
3rd.
We'll be talking about that. And is the first of a 3-book contract with Level Best Books. She has written short stories which have appeared in the anthologies Mystery, Atlanta Style, Shhh Murder, and Finally Home. She is retired from a 27-year career with Delta Airlines and spends her non-writing time traveling, volunteering, and serving on the Sisters in Crime Atlanta chapters board as treasurer. Sharon, thank you so much for joining us.
It's my pleasure.
So, I always like to start these conversations off by asking our authors to tell us about themselves, aside from their miniature book jacket bio. And I like to start in the beginning. So, tell us about your childhood.
Well, I was born in Schenectady, New York, upstate New York. And then I moved to New Jersey, where I went to public school kindergarten there. And when I was 5 years old, we moved to Texas. And I basically grew up in Tyler, Texas, which is a small town in East Texas. Actually, the town where Going Home is set, Two Wells, is sort of patterned after Tyler, Texas. I changed the name, and that way I could have more more freedom with all the landmarks and the people and everything like that without offending anybody. But anyway, so I kind of all my childhood I was considered a Yankee because back in the 50s when I was a little kid, people were still fighting the Civil War. I had my grandmother was born and raised in Texas, and she never really trusted my mom. According to her, my parents had a mixed marriage, and because my mom was from the north and my dad was from the south, and anytime my brother or I did something she didn't like, she said, "Well, that's the Yankee in you." I had one of my teachers actually called me out for being, she'd actually call me Yankee in class. So it was a real thing.
Well,
And
how did your parents meet? How did they get together?
they met during World War II. My mom was going to college in South Carolina. She went to Furman. Well, it wasn't Furman University then. It was Furman College, and
Mhm.
my dad was just getting ready to ship out overseas. There was a military base close by, and they had some kind of mixer, and
Mhm.
they met and went out once or twice, and then exchanged addresses, and they wrote to each other during the war, and I guess they sort of fell in love by correspondence. And after in 1945, when he came back from the war, they got married.
That
And
that's great. So your mom is considered the Yankee, and
yeah,
She,
Yeah, she was from the north. Actually, she was born in the Philippines, but then her family was from Minnesota. And after when she was 12 years old, her dad died, and they came back to the States and they moved to New York. So
okay.
she was living in New York, and
Hmm.
then went to college in the South.
Interesting. And so then, so when your dad came home from the war and your parents got married, they settled in New York.
Yeah, yeah. My
Okay.
dad went to work for GE in
Oh,
Schenectady. Yeah,
that's a good
yeah.
company.
He had a lifelong career with GE.
Yeah.
So then he transferred to, I think, a plant in Bloomfield, New Jersey, and then
Mhm.
to the one in Tyler, Texas,
Aha.
which got bought out by Train in the early 80s. And
Mhm.
that's when he was 60 then, and he took an early retirement
Mhm.
package. And um,
So,
yeah, he's
so
home
going
there.
to Texas, that was going home for your dad.
Sort of, yeah, because his mom and brother, all of his relatives were from Texas. My dad was born in Texas,
Hmm.
and a lot of his relatives were from there.
Okay. So we have traveled the United States with you.
Mhm.
So you grew up in Texas, and I sympathize with the Yankee references. And not that it's a bad thing. I don't mind people calling me a Yankee, but what's ironic about me is I'm from Miami. And I moved to
And
Atlanta
still
and they
is.
called me a Yankee. So
You're
whatever.
from further south.
Whatever, Georgia, whatever, I accept you. So let's talk about you getting out of Texas and what happened with you. How'd you get
Well,
to
let's see. I went to college in Texas also. Did my undergraduate um, degree at the University of Houston. And then I was working for a while at the welfare department, and I got a scholarship from the Rotary Club to study in France for a year. So I went to France for a year, and I kind of lost all my Southern accent in France because, I guess I had eventually acquired a Southern accent. Maybe it wasn't that bad. I'd lost the Yankee accent. But in France, I didn't hear English very much, except the only English I heard, I had some English friends, so I heard the British accent, and
Hmm,
then I had a Canadian friend and a, another friend from Michigan. So those were the accents I heard when we're speaking English. And when I came back to Texas, it sounded like everybody had an accent, which I hadn't noticed before. But anyway, after I came back to Texas, and then I was there for about another year, and I started applying for graduate schools, and I went to um, graduate school at the University of Southern California.
mhm.
And so then that's when I moved to California. I I got a master's in professional writing there. And I thought after 2 years, I'm going to be a rich, famous author and, my ship will come in. And when it didn't, I thought, well, I guess I'm going to have to get a real job. And I had a roommate who had a friend who worked for Western Airlines. And one day, his friend called and said, "Hey, they're hiring in reservations for Western Airlines, and it pays $9 an hour, which was a lot of money back in 1982, which
Yeah.
was when this happened, and um, plus travel benefits. And I love to travel, and so I was the one that listened to the message on the answer machine. So when my roommate got home, it's I want to go too. I want to go to the interview. So I ended up, using his connections, got hired at Western Airlines, which later merged with Delta. So I
Yeah.
had a 27-year career with the airlines, Western and then Delta.
So when Delta and Western merged, that they shut down operations where you were and you came to Atlanta then?
No, no, they just expanded. They basically took over Western Airlines. So we
Right.
were still in this. I was working at the Los Angeles airport at the time, and one day we were Western and the next day we were Delta. We changed uniforms and had, done some training to learn their computer system. And um, the some of the planes still had Western tails. It took a while to get all the planes painted. There were a lot of growing pains for the merger, but basically one day it was April Fool's Day. Delta liked to do things on April Fool's Day. So um, anyway, that was we were Western. So I worked in Los Angeles for a few years, and I met my husband there. We also worked for Western, and I mean he also worked for Western, and we got to the point we wanted to buy a house, and we couldn't afford anything in Los Angeles. That you could either live in a ghetto or you could get something 2 hours away with a 2 hour commute. And so we thought, well, we work for an airline, we might as well work somewhere. We don't have to stay in Los Angeles. So we started looking at cities that he was a flight attendant. So we looked at cities that were Delta Flu and had flight attendant bases, and um, started putting in for transfers. And we fell in love with Seattle. In fact, we knew some people in Seattle and looked at a house, fell in love with a house, bought a house in Seattle, assuming we could transfer. And it didn't happen right away.
No.
It took me 2.5 years to get transferred to Seattle.
Oh my
So
God.
I stayed with my mother-in-law for 2.5 years. I told her it was going to be short term. And then commuted on my days off to Seattle. And then eventually I got transferred up there. And then I got into and to get to Seattle, I actually had to take a pay cut I was a passenger service agent at the Los Angeles airport, doing ticketing and working the gates. And the um, the only openings for full time was in cabin service, cleaning airplanes. So, and it was a like $700 a month pay cut. But I went ahead and did that to get where I could actually live in my house. And we actually bought it at a good time because real estate was rising. So it actually turned out to be a pretty good investment that we bought when we did. But it seemed crazy at the time that we bought a house that we couldn't really live in, or we're only living in part time. But anyway, then I got transferred, and then I think I did that for about 9 months, and then the reservations office in Seattle came open, so I transferred there. So I got most of my pay back. The pay for a reservations agent was pretty close to what an airport agent was making. So I got to live in my house, got my pay back, and then I think that lasted about 2 years, and then the airlines were going through some tough times, and they decided to close 8 reservations offices around the country. And Seattle was the first one that they that they closed. And so we decided that, well, Atlanta is the headquarters, and there's a lot of career opportunities in Atlanta. And when that closes, we'll all be in trouble. We won't have to be moving around the country every few years when our place closes. They have a huge flight attendant base, a lot more career opportunities in Atlanta. So we moved to Atlanta, and then I actually started applying for other jobs. So I never actually had to, once I knew that, we were going to be transferring, and I never actually had to work a day in Atlanta reservations. I had another job with a promotion. And so I worked in the GO for, I guess, about 15 years till I took an early out retirement package.
Yeah.
The airline was such as you know, I think from your mom, it's kind of an unstable career. They have the ups and downs and lots of layoffs. And yeah, I saw too many people being cut for no reason than just being in the wrong place at the wrong time. And I thought, when they offer an early retirement package and I'm eligible, I'm getting out.
Yeah.
So that's what I did.
Yeah. No, it sounds like it's worked out well for you. And, learning about you and like all of your volunteer work and everything, it does not appear that you are sitting at home twiddling your thumbs for sure.
No.
Let's
I remember when my dad retired and I asked him how was it going, and he says, I don't know how I found the time to go to work because he had so many interests and
Mhm.
so many hobbies and so much going on. And that statement really does ring true. Yeah, I do. I volunteer for the Humane Society, the and I foster cats and you know try to write
Mhm.
and
Yeah. Yeah.
in a lot of different groups.
Do you consider writing your career now?
Yeah, I think so.
Mhm. And
Even though I'm not, my husband always teases me that we're waiting for the money to roll in. It's like
yeah, right.
it's my
I hear you.
career. It takes up the bulk of my time, but does not provide the bulk of my money.
So let's go back a little bit because when you were in college, you majored in English and French.
Hmm.
And was that from a language, like you were becoming immersed in the language, the French language or the French culture?
Yeah, and French literature, French language,
Okay.
and I got a Rotary scholarship to live in France for a year.
Mhm.
That let's see, that happened. I guess it was after it was a graduate fellowship, so it was after I had actually finished my degree. And really, the 1 year of living in France and being immersed um, was more. Um, I learned more of the language than the 6 years I studied French for 2 years in high school and then 4 years in college.
Mhm.
That 1 year was probably equivalent to all that.
So you kind of joked around because you talked about getting your master's in professional writing, but when you were getting your English and your French degree, what were you thinking potential career opportunity for you with those two degrees?
Well, there back in the 70s when I was going to college,
Hmm.
there weren't a lot of career opportunities for women that they really tried to push women towards teaching and those were kind of the more acceptable things. I mean, I always wanted to be a writer,
Hmm.
but I didn't quite know how to go about it and make money at it.
Hmm.
And so I was kind of lukewarm about teaching, but I decided I'd get a teaching certificate.
Right.
And
Hmm.
then I got the teaching certificate and I never really pursued it.
Hmm.
Actually, when I did my student teaching, the counselor that I had, I guess she could see that my heart wasn't in teaching because she really gave me a hard time and um, she she wanted to fail me. She
Aw.
finally passed me, but she didn't write me rec. She did not want me in the pool of teachers. She's like, maybe you're good at something else. And I kind of thought about it because, like I said, I didn't really want to be a teacher. Although later, when I got older, I um, got into corporate
Hmm.
training.
Right.
Although I was more in the design, the writing, the training material than the
Hmm.
actual facilitation, teaching the classes. But I guess with my student teaching, I was I I started school young, graduated from high school when I was 17, went right to college, did my degree like in 3 years, took summer classes and everything. So I was like 19, barely 20 when I was doing student teaching, and I looked young. And I wasn't, I wasn't as mature. I had about the same level of maturity as the students. So I didn't have the ability to really command, and I was teaching high school. And in fact,
Wow.
when I was doing my student teaching, I think I was kicked out of the teacher's parking lot one time. I was kicked out of the teacher's lunchroom because they thought I was a student trying to trying to sneak in. Wouldn't let me in the teacher's lounge. So
No wonder
I,
you
I
didn't like it.
I don't think, when the boys would make jokes and I'd laugh. Yeah, I didn't have that command of, control of a class.
Mhm.
I mean,
Well,
I was like one of the guys.
yeah. Well, that you bring up a good point. Like, do they even teach that? Do they just assume that once you get this, certification, oh, well, you just got to go in and be authoritative. Well, maybe you haven't been versed in that, you know what I mean? So, don't be so hard on yourself as far as that goes. I think it's a great story, honestly, and it's very
My
interesting.
failed teaching career.
And that was kind of where I was going with it, because I knew as part of your career at Delta that because it's in a more lengthy bio that we have on you, is that you did end up going into training and
Mhm,
professional writing, more
mhm.
structured writing as opposed to creative writing. And so I thought that was really interesting. And so it all makes sense. And it's really cool when you can look back on the path and the course that your life has taken, and you see where, hey, little did I know when I was studying professional writing and preparing to be a teacher that I didn't want to be, that eventually those two things would come together later in a career. And
Mhm.
I love that synchronicity, that you didn't even know was happening, that it was
Yeah. Yeah, it was a better fit, I think, writing the training material because I,
happening.
had the experience working for the airlines on the front
Mhm,
lines, and
mhm,
then, the writing and, the
mhm,
ability, and had some background in teaching. I
mhm,
did some teaching. I did like train the trainer classes, and I did facilitate some of the classes. I enjoyed it. I think I preferred being a designer and writing the training material than teaching all the
right.
time. Although the facilitators got to travel a lot, but maybe a little bit too much, and
Mhm, mhm,
I liked traveling um to pilot a class that I had written, and observe the facilitators teaching it, and then you can kind of see what's working, and what needs tweaking and
mhm.
that kind of thing. I enjoyed things like that.
That's great. So let's talk about, because you've mentioned that you've always enjoyed writing. So where did the love of the creative writing, the storytelling, where did that come from? Or what do you recall about that when you were young?
Well, I always wanted to write. I remember when I was a little kid, my mother would always put me to bed too early, and I couldn't go to sleep. And so I would tell myself stories until I went to sleep. And it would usually be if I'd seen a movie or read a book. My mother also read to us a lot.
Uh-huh.
So, I would take the characters, it's like fan fiction before it was a thing.
Right.
I would take a movie or a book that I'd read and take the characters and take them on to new adventures. Or sometimes I had imagined myself in this environment that I had learned. So um, I always told myself stories.
Mhm.
And and then in school, of course, I always liked creative writing assignments, and I always got good grades on those, and I always got compliments from my teachers, and so
Mhm.
I was encouraged.
And so to me, the majoring in English makes perfect sense, right? You liked to read, you fantasized about storytelling and writing. And so, yes, I definitely see the segue into English. And so the interest in French, though, you said you took 2 years as a language. But so what made you say, hey, I'm not just going to study English, I'm also going to study French in depthly?
Well, I've always had an interest in travel and foreign languages. And actually, I started taking Spanish in elementary school. We
Mhm,
had a teacher that came in and taught us Spanish.
mhm,
And then when I went to, I guess in junior high, did I take some Spanish in junior high? And then I wanted to go, when I went to high school, I wanted to go up because I had already had a lot of basic Spanish. I wanted to go up to the next level and they wouldn't let me. They said I had to take basic Spanish again. I thought, well, I'll start a new language. So I
Mm-hmm.
did French. I
Mm-hmm.
did 2 years of French and I also did a year of German. So I
Oh,
was always
wow.
into
Yeah.
languages. And when I was um I used to get tapes from the library when I was driving back and forth to work at the airline, Western Airlines, and then later Delta. I used to listen to language tapes in my car, and I'd check out um, all kinds of different. I listen to Dutch and Arabic and all
Wow.
Italian and Portuguese and all that. When I we did a my mother had always wanted to visit Rio de Janeiro, and when I started working for the airlines, um, I said I found this package where we could go to Rio de Janeiro. It was really cheap, and talked my parents into going there. And my mom was like, "But we're not on a tour. We don't have a guide. We don't speak the language." And I thought, well, I'll get some tapes, some Portuguese tapes, and learn Portuguese. So that was a few months in advance. So I studied Portuguese, and I got to the point where I could get around. I wasn't fluent, but I could ask directions,
Mhm.
buy things, do your basic travel vocabulary, have simple conversations.
That is
So
great. That's
so
amazing.
I've always had an interest in language. So
Yeah.
to answer your
Okay.
questions.
Yeah. So now let's talk about your writing career. And so I'm thinking of, in particular, based on your story that you just shared, I'm thinking about your second mystery, The Secrets of the
The
Galapagos.
Galapagos.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
I think I
only because
published
it's an
one.
exotic setting and yeah, tell us how did you even become fascinated enough with the Galapagos to incorporate it into a story?
Well, of course, I love to travel, and that's why working for the airline was such a good fit for me. And the Galapagos was always one of my bucket list trips. And so my husband and I did a Galapagos cruise in, I think, 2014, something like that. We did a Galapagos cruise. And I hadn't, I just was in it to enjoy the trip. I had no idea that I would eventually write a book, write a book there. And I guess about 6 months later, I got an idea for it. And it was kind of based on something that happened to us on the trip. Um, one day we were out snorkeling with a group, and usually um, they're very meticulous, keeping track of everybody, all these hand signals to make sure you're okay and then counting the heads. But one day my husband and I were doing one activity and we joined a snorkeling group late, and there were 2 boats full of snorkelers, and we didn't, I guess neither guide really thought that we belonged to them. I guess each one thought that we belonged to the other boat. So anyway, we're swimming along, looking at all the fish, having a good time. And then all of a sudden I look up and where is everybody?
They left you.
And the boats were on their way back to the ship without us. And I just remember this terrified feeling of being left behind in the water. We weren't that far. We were close enough to shore that I probably could have swum to shore, but it's a deserted island. There's nothing but blue-footed boobies and sea turtles and that kind of stuff. There's no food and water and
Yeah,
facility, any kind of facilities. And I remember waving and jumping up and down. And I finally got somebody in one of the boats. I got their attention. They turned around and came back and got us. And my husband was a little bit away because of, oh, here he is. But then I started thinking after, so lived happily ever after, got back on the ship. But I thought, what if somebody didn't get picked up? What
yeah,
happened?
yeah.
And So that is my opening scene in Secrets of the Galapagos.
Mhm.
And then I thought, well, what would happen? Why would somebody be left? That doesn't make sense because they're so meticulous. They get in so much
Mhm.
trouble. They're responsible for all these people. It's a sensitive environment. They've got to keep track of everybody. You can't just have tourists loose in, on these deserted islands. And so I thought about maybe the maybe the person, maybe it's intentional. Maybe the person
Mm.
knows something that we don't, that somebody doesn't want out. And that I actually I got that idea too from one of our guides when we were touring the Darwin Center. There was a famous turtle called Lonesome George, and I don't know if anybody's heard of him, but he was like the last survivor of his species, of a certain of the giant tortoise species. And they tried to breed him, but he died before he was successfully bred. And um, so that was kind of the end of the line. And he was a big famous tourist attraction. So in my story, and one of the guy when we were touring the place where he used to live, the tortoise sanctuary, one of the guides told me, he says, "Well, I know a secret about Lonesome George, but if I told you, I'd have to kill you." So I can
Oh,
never get
okay.
I could never. So I'm thinking maybe there's a secret about, you know, some.
Yeah.
So in my story, um, George is gone, but they have discovered another species of a tortoise that from one species that they thought had gone extinct. It's the Floriana subspecies, and it's Tio Armando, and he's been discovered. So he's like the new Lonesome George. So he's a big tourist attraction on the island. But the person who disappears is a tortoise researcher, and she's done some research and some
Mhm.
DNA tests, and she finds out that maybe
Don't tell them too
George
much.
is.
Don't give it away. We want people to get the book off the shelf and read
Okay, yes.
it.
Anyway, so there's a secret.
Now, one of the things we alluded to in the intro was that you have a new book that is poised to be released.
Mhm.
And the title is Trap,
Trap,
Neuter, Die.
trap, neuter, die. Mhm.
Right. And the reason why it's poised is you've had a bit of a adventure in getting to publishing. So let's talk about that real quick, and then eventually we're going to circle back to the secrets of the Galapagos based on what you shared with me earlier this week, right?
Mhm.
Okay.
Okay.
So tell us what's happening with Trap Neuter Die. It's a new series, exciting opportunity for Sharon, and
Yeah. And it was, I guess, I wrote the book based on the Galapagos. We did take a trip. uh, Um, let's say no, not the Galapagos. That was Secrets of the Galapagos. Trap, neuter, die. I'm a volunteer for the Humane Society, and I we have there's a program um for feral cats. I didn't really know about it before I volunteered, but it's for population control. And what they do is the cats breed exponentially if you don't know that. And so they have a lot of rescue groups have programs where there's a lot of cats that are not friendly to humans. They really kind of live they've adapted to live outdoors. And the they're I got distracted. I'm like I was reading in the chat. Um
yeah.
the the cats are adapted to live outdoors,
Mhm.
and but they breed so much. So if a lot of rescue groups will trap them, get them fixed, and then they clip the left ear so they know that the cat has already been fixed and
Mhm.
vaccinated. So when they put it back, so they're not end up trapping the same cat over and over
Mhm.
again.
But they
And the
let him back
rescue,
out. They let
yeah,
him.
just
Okay.
let them back out because that's their home. They're not um uh, there's some, you go to some colonies and you'll find friendly ones that
Mhm.
can um be moved to a home,
Mhm.
or like kittens that are young enough to be socialized. You can
Mhm.
trap those and bring those inside and get those adopted out. But a lot of
Mhm.
the adults, their home is the outdoors, that they live
Yeah.
there, they're happy. You bring them inside, they're miserable. They'll scratch up your
Yeah.
scratch up your screen doors and windows and get out the first chance
Mhm.
they get. So and they live in colonies together. They have family groups. And so, but because they breed exponentially, if we get them fixed, then they don't, the population doesn't get out of control.
Right.
And so a lot of rescue groups are doing that, which the Fayette Humane Society is the one that I'm involved in, do that too. So like I said, I didn't know anything about this program before I volunteered. And so I've been out with some of the trappers to sort of see what they do and how it's managed. So I decided that's how I set my novel, is it's around a rescue group. And with rescue groups too, we get a lot of volunteers who are sentenced to community service. Maybe they've had a traffic violation or
Mhm.
something like that. So in my story, that way I can explain without too much of an info dump, because the reader is learning about the trap neuter release,
Mhm.
trap neuter return program, along with um, along with the character. So my main character gets a she gets a DUI. She goes to a party, and she's kind of small and lightweight, and the second glass of wine is too much.
Yep. Takes her
and
over the edge. Yep. Mhm.
and she's from California, and she does those rolling California stops that her boyfriend doesn't
Mhm.
like. And so cop picks her up and gives gives her a DUI. So she's
Mhm.
sentenced to community service. And so she's learning about with a rescue group, and the person that she's paired with is a real diehard um, TNR guru, and she has no tolerance for somebody that would drink and drive. You find out later that she lost her family to a drunk driver.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
she-
Yeah.
there's a little bit of friction at the beginning um, between the two, but so she gradually learns about this
Mhm.
program. Of course, the first night on duty, when she's doing the um, trap neuter return program, they discover a dead body.
Ah,
And
that's where the dye comes in. I was wondering, what's gonna, is somebody killing the cats? But no, no.
yeah,
It,
yeah,
it's,
it's a,
yeah.
a human body, not a
Okay.
cat.
All
I don't
right.
kill any
I was
cats in the
wondering, Sharon.
story.
Yeah, I was wondering. And so this is gonna be a series for you, right? Is
Yes,
it gonna be, it's a series.
it's a
Okay.
series.
All right,
I'm
cool.
almost finished with book two.
Right.
Book three is um, still in the
Is it
ether
percolating?
somewhere. Yeah, still percolating.
Okay.
I'm almost finished with book
So,
two.
but we
Um,
scheduled this conversation. We scheduled it months in advance and very
mhm.
strategically because you were expecting the book to be published.
Yes, it was supposed to come out September the
Right,
3rd,
right.
and so there's been some delays.
Yeah.
And we had it's with Level Best Books, and um the owneress has been going through some problems with her mom, has Alzheimer's, and there's
Mhm.
again been some issues. And they were at BoucherCon, the conference just at the end of August. We had a bookseller back out at the last minute, and so Level Best ended up taking over the bookseller role. So they were kind of consumed with being the bookseller for for Bouchercon, so
Yeah.
that took a
That's a
lot of
big
time away from the
undertaking.
releases. Yeah.
Yeah.
So there are some delays. So
Do
I
do
don't
you have a
have the
new
September 3rd release. And
uh-huh.
I'm supposed to get uh, the cover too. Now they're gonna try it. They have like a new schedule and they're gonna try to get the cover out. But when I got the
Mhm.
cover, I didn't like any of the designs too. So that's another problem with the delay is that
Mhm.
and I kind of got pushed behind. But
Mhm. Do you have a
so
new publication date?
no,
Okay.
um anytime I was supposed to see a new cover this week
Yeah.
and we didn't. The document, the manuscript is pretty much edited. It was pretty clean.
Mhm.
They didn't have a lot of edits.
Yeah.
So
So that's
um
not the problem. The problem is on the
no,
production
it's
side.
the cover and just
Yeah.
the
Right.
production.
Hmm.
And
And I thought that might be interesting to a reader audience to know, like what an author, some of the struggles that an author could have. Met your deadline for having the book ready to go, and it's now in someone else's hands to actually kind of get the ball rolling. And to me, it was interesting, and I didn't want to reschedule us because
mhm,
I thought that, like I said, that might be of interest to people to know that there's this business side of writing and publication that as a reader, I don't know, I just know you got a new book on the shelf and I'm going to go get it, and I'm not aware of what you went through to get that book on that shelf. And this is the first time we have had an author on Off the Shelf whose most recent book is in
it's not
waiting.
on the shelf.
It's not on the shelf. I love that. It's not quite on the shelf. So I found that whole process fascinating. But you shared some great news with me about that takes us back to Secrets of the Galapagos. Tell us what's now has happened. Um,
Um,
as we're
well,
waiting on Trap, Neuter, Die.
yeah. Well, my first two mysteries were published by Sunbury Press. Going Home was the first one, and then
Mhm,
Secrets of the Galapagos that we were just talking about. And I've also written a sequel to Secrets of the Galapagos, and it's with Sunbury Press now, and they've been sitting on it for over a year, but they finally are moving forward with it.
mhm,
And so they have put Secrets of the Galapagos on NetGalley. So if anybody has access
mhm.
to NetGalley, it's free through the end of the month. So you can read that. And that's in preparation for the sequel. And
So,
so um,
what prompted you to write a sequel?
um, I don't know. I just got an idea. I just got an idea for it.
Mm.
And
Is this
um,
okay, so going back to the Secrets of the Galapagos, that was like a visitor of the area, right? Not
yeah,
who
yeah.
lives there. And
Mhm.
so is the sequel the same main character that is returning to the islands, or is the sequel the islands themselves? Are they the character?
It's the same main character
Mhm,
and some of the characters in Secrets of the Galapagos. In Secrets of the Galapagos, um, my protagonist she's kind of in a very bad situation. Um, she had quit her job to start a business. It was a nonprofit, and um, so she and her boyfriend, who was a veterinarian, had started this spay neuter clinic together. And she took on a business partner who was recommended by an old college roommate, and he turned out to be a crook and a con man. And
mhm,
he took all the money and with left them holding the bag. And so now her business is bankrupt. She's got all these investors mad at her. Her boyfriend, who was her fellow investor, thinks that she exercised bad judgment, and he breaks up with her. So she's got a broken heart. She's got a lost business.
Yeah.
She's a
Broken bank
pariah
account. Yeah.
around town. So her grandmother takes her on this Galapagos cruise
Ah. Mm-hmm.
and to try to, and she said, I'll take you on a trip anywhere you want to go. And she said, well, I want to go to the Galapagos. And she really has an ulterior motive because this con man, she's got and she's got a track on him as he's
Ah.
running a scam down in the Galapagos. And so she's
Okay.
gonna expose him.
Good for
and
her. Good for
and
her.
it yeah, kind of cat and mouse game. She bites off a
Yeah.
little more than she can chew. But anyway, in the process, she meets a police detective, and there's a little attraction to them between
Mm-hmm.
each other in the secrets of the Galapagos. I kind of leave it like, maybe maybe they'll get together, and
Mm-hmm.
she meets some other characters down there. But anyway,
Mm-hmm.
she ends up another person on the Galapagos cruise that she goes on is um, he's a CEO of a luxury hotel chain, and they're building a hotel in the Galapagos. And he ends up offering her a job managing
Mm-hmm.
the hotel that he's building there. And
Mm-hmm.
so she ends up staying in the Galapagos, managing this hotel, and starts dating the police detective that she
Mm-hmm.
met.
Well, and
And
so will there
there,
be a sequel to the sequel? Or is
who
that it? Are we
knows?
done?
We'll see. There
Uh-huh.
could be. There,
Yeah, because
they're still alive at the end. So
right, because you weren't intending on the Secrets of the Galapagos to actually have a sequel. That just something came to you and you're like, hey, I can continue this storyline a little.
yeah, yeah, I
Yeah.
just kind of
Well,
got
you never
the
know.
idea. And so yeah, they're having the grand opening for this hotel,
Mm-hmm.
and the uh, they have a film crew has come down to do a documentary, and
Mm-hmm.
so they have a VIP guest, and of course the VIP guest is found poisoned in a room the first first night. So now
Here we
she's
go.
got to manage the grand opening, and
Uh-huh.
try to solve the murder, and one of her staff could be a murderer, and kind of help
Hmm.
the police detective kind of snaps into detective mode, so
Okay.
she kind of has to help him, but there's some clashes with um who they think did it, and
So,
so in the end they solved the murder.
well, I'm excited for you because unfortunately the trap neuter die has like it's in a stall. It's in a holding pattern. And so it's not so it's exciting that this other thing, like you're not in a stall. You've
Yeah,
got this other thing now that you can work through while hopefully that gets resolved.
yeah.
So yeah, Sharon Marchisello is not going anywhere anytime soon. We're going to have her about for a bit. Now, I do want to say that Linda went to NetGalley and she cannot find it when she does a search for the title. So she is
It's
asked,
Secrets of the Galapagos.
no, no,
Is
no. Oh, is that the one, Linda?
Yeah,
It
Secrets of the Galapagos is the one
on
that's on
NetGalley.
NetGalley.
Got
Yeah,
it.
because
So,
let's see,
oh,
the sequel that Sunbury Press is going to publish is called Murder at Leisure Dreams,
oh, okay.
Galapagos. Yeah, and
Okay.
so this will be.
Okay.
You
Well,
couldn't find that?
yeah,
Oh,
they're
she said.
struggling to find it. So, Sharon, it's hard to believe, but we are coming up on the end of our
Oh
hour.
well.
And there's so many things we could still chat about. Like we didn't, I wanted to ask you, and when you were talking about your main character, is her name Laurel?
Um, let's
For
see.
the Galapagos?
Laurel is
Yeah.
Laurel is one of the characters. Not She's not the
Oh,
main character
oh, okay.
in the
Oh,
Galapagos.
Giovanna is, yeah.
Giovanna. Yeah.
Yeah, when you were saying that she had some financial difficulties, I was going to say, well, that book, that first book you wrote, the nonfiction book,
I could
you
recommend
could
it to
read
her.
that and maybe get some pointers. And so that's another thing that I find fascinating is you have dedicated your education and your life to the creative writing, which, then you ended up in the technical writing side with what you did with Delta. And yet somewhere along the way, like I was expecting to read that you like majored in accounting. right? And that you were a finance professional. And I'm like, no, she somehow though got interested enough in personal finance to actually your first book was
Yeah,
a
I was in an investment club for a number of years. So, and I've always been, sort of interested in that. But that's why I self-published that
Mhm.
Live Well, Grow Wealth, because nobody's going to even take me seriously because I don't have any credentials, like personal. Um, I
Mm.
looked around. I did when I was at Delta, I was in Toastmasters and I think I did a
Yeah.
couple of speeches on finance and people go, wow, you should write a book about that. Well, I didn't know. And it's like, this is basic stuff. This is like,
Right.
that's what I want.
101.
So, like that, a lot of people don't read it, but I found you know, the people who need the book aren't interested, and the people who, find it interesting don't really need it. That and they buy
Well,
it. Somebody who, you know, is good with their money and thinks, oh, this would be great for my wayward kid, and they'll
right.
buy it
That's
as
what
a
I was thinking.
they won't read it.
I think I'm gonna get it for my kid. So, do you feel like the content is still relevant? Like it's still
Yeah,
applicable?
yeah,
Mhm.
it's basic stuff. There could be, I haven't read through it in a long time. There's probably some um things that need updating.
Updating. Mhm.
I think the last time when we did the audio book, um there was some age limit that had changed or something like that
Oh, yeah.
that it's
Hmm.
something that to correct. But most things
Hmm.
were still, the concepts are pretty basic.
Hmm. Yeah. So real quick before we wrap up, like I would like to see if you can help those that are looking for your book on NetGalley, if you can like see if you can find the link and share it in the chat
Yeah,
if possible.
I will try to find it.
And
Yeah.
um and I know that while you're trying to do that, if I'm asking you questions that can be distracting. So what I'll do instead while Sharon is doing that is I'll remind everybody that this Off the Shelf is a monthly program. And I'm very excited that next month we're going to be talking with author Mike Cobb, and he's waving right now. And that's the end of the month, right, Mike? We typically have these.
I think it's the 24th.
Yeah, let's look real quick. 26th.
26th.
Yeah. So the last Saturday of the month, the fourth Saturday of the month, which is when we try to be consistent with this schedule and have it on the fourth Saturday of the month. But this month we did schedule it a week early, and that is because Sharon, who is like you, we've been talking about her volunteerism, and she's very active in her retirement. And next weekend, she is going to be at Sleuth Fest, which is in Petersburg, Florida. So she's going to be on the road. And Sharon, are you going to be on a panel at Sleuth Fest or are you just attending?
I'm going to be on a panel. It's on Thursday, and let's see. Oh, I found it. Here it is.
Yay. Good.
I'll put it in the chat.
Thank you. Thank you for doing that.
Um, yeah, it's a panel about, gosh, I'm drawing a blank. Lisa Malice is going to be the moderator.
Oh, fun. Oh boy, that'll be fun.
Um, what is it? Dialogue or something like that. Okay, put the link, the
Thank
NetGalley
you, Sharon.
link.
Thank you. Oh no, Linda lost sound.
Oh no.
Linda, read. We can't even tell her. Read the chat. It's in the chat. Can we put that on our Facebook? Sharon, like in the
Yeah,
comments? Is that okay for us to do that?
yeah. Oh, sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
All
Yeah,
right.
I want to get, reviews, and then, maybe people will get
Yeah,
interested in reading the sequel if they read the first book. Because the
absolutely.
came
Absolutely.
out right before the pandemic, so I didn't get to do, you know,
Hmm.
any, but it really hasn't sold as well as as the first book, because I,
Really?
didn't do, any events
Mhm.
for, a year.
Right,
And,
right.
I had things scheduled, and
Mhm.
then everything crapped out. So um,
And
it
so,
hasn't gotten much love.
and going back to your first novel, Going Home, that really kind of like is a heart touching. It's a mystery. There's mystery in it,
Mhm.
and intrigue, and but a family drama. And do you want to just very quickly kind of tell us how that story came about and your inspiration for it?
Well, it was inspired by my mother's battle with Alzheimer's disease. And
Mhm.
so the mother character, so it's a daughter who's a baby boomer, and her mother has Alzheimer's. She's kind of in denial. It takes place right after right after 9/11. And the reason I chose that time, I actually wrote it after, I think I started writing it in 2003, but the first mystery that I wrote, it took so long to between the time I wrote it to I'm sending it out and doing rewrites and everything. Then there were all kinds of anachronisms. So it's like I'm going to just set it in a time period so that I don't have
Mhm.
to keep updating technology.
Yes,
This is the way it was. And I thought 2001 is a really memorable time. People remember what it was like, and so that's why I chose that time. And it was 2003 when I started writing it, but it didn't get published. It got accepted by the publisher in 2013, didn't come out till 2014. So um, that's but anyway, it was for what's so it's based on my mother's battle with Alzheimer's disease.
Mhm.
The daughter is a baby boomer. She comes home to check on her mom but she lives in another town, but she comes comes every couple of weeks to check on her, and she's got live-in care. So when she comes home, there's her mother standing over the bludgeoned body of her caregiver, and she can't give a straight answer about what happened. And she's
Right.
alone, so she becomes a suspect.
Mhm.
And I kind of got that idea when I was dealing with my mom, because you could just have a normal conversation with with her, and then 5 minutes later, it's like it never happened. She'd start asking the same questions, and like
Yeah.
you never heard. And I thought that would be really frustrating if you're trying to do an investigation or trying to
Mhm.
question a witness or a suspect. So that's
Yeah.
how that came about.
Mhm.
Um,
It's a tender story to me, and I mean, despite the dead body, I enjoyed it a lot. Just the dynamics of the relationship, and there's some twists in there that you don't see coming. And I thought it was well done. And and as I said, it's got this tenderness to it because of her Michelle, I think her name is, and
yeah,
her relationship with her mom, and trying to help, like that desperation that a parent, a daughter or a child feels in trying to help their parent.
yeah.
Something is, and I can relate to that too, as well. So you and I have quite a bit in common, so which I didn't know until we had this conversation. So kudos for the conversation. So, as we wrap up, we have gone a little bit over time, but we also did start a few minutes late. I want to thank everybody for joining us today. In particular, I want to thank Sharon, for being here and sharing her story. And as you can tell, there was so much to talk about. And typically, we're very orderly in how we go through the process. But Sharon having a fascinating backstory really contributed to us having this very engaging conversation. So thank you, Sharon, so much for sharing a lot of yourself. We talked a lot about your personal life and experiences, and I enjoyed that. And I enjoyed getting to know you even better than I thought. Already thought I knew you, and I learned so much. So I appreciate it. Thank you, everyone. I hope you'll join us next month. I know that's Halloween time, but I'm hoping you'll join us next month when we talk with Mike Cobb. I'm looking forward to that conversation. And keep an eye on our Facebook page. That's where we'll have as much up-to-date information as the most up-to-date information, I should say. And we also have our website, Sisters in Crime Atlanta. .com, which again has information on it, but Facebook is probably the most current info. So thank you, everyone. I hope you enjoy your Saturday, and wherever you are, it is as beautiful as it is here today in Atlanta.
Thanks for having me.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
And thanks
Thanks for
you guys
being
for coming.
here. All right, now we have to stop the recording. Ah, are you sure you want to stop recording? Yes.